Welcome to the Throne podcast. This is Dakota Kingery.
This is Dan Santana.
Dan Santana, what's up? This is episode 9 of the To the Throne podcast. Welcome. We're glad you're here. Just want to remind you to like and subscribe on whatever platform you may be listening on. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, be sure to rate and review. That helps us get listened by more people like you. So just thank you for listening. We appreciate it. And just want to recap a little bit. Last week we had a great interview with Andrew Lennon, goes by Saint Lennon. We went to his studio in Virginia, which is great, gorgeous drive, really pretty out there. Mm-hmm. I grew up out there, so it was kind of cool to be back. But we got to have a great conversation with him about art and creativity and spirituality and some of the things that are interwoven into what he does. And I think it was great. We touched on some great topics that we put on our Instagram, one of which was really centered to sort of the whole conversation.
Right.
Something he said was, make art, not content.
Right.
And I thought it was so good. And as content creators, as just creators in general, I think it was a great reminder, at least for me, to be like, get back to the core heart of why you're doing what you're doing, and not just going through the motions. So I think, you were listening in.
Yep.
Not necessarily in the conversation, but what did you get from it?
Yeah, sitting there listening to you guys talk was great. And what was cool about meeting Andrew is that, you see people from afar, and you don't know how they're going to be, in person.
Right, yeah.
Same thing for us.
It's
you
funny
really know
that's
us.
how the day and age that
Yes.
we're in is like, you message DM people.
Right.
And, you're like,
and you don't really know them.
Yeah.
You know a little bit about them. But he was definitely, better than expected. And not that we expected great things, of course, from him. But it was like he lived up to all of that.
Yeah.
And was such a gracious host, and brought a lot of wisdom even for his age. Just he carries a lot on him. So, but I did love that section of the conversation, because it's easy for people who create to lose their passion when it becomes a check the box scenario, and you start saying, "Well, I just have to create content," because that's what you do now, and that's what the world craves, content. So now it's like, I need to create that, but then you lose the love, you lose the passion and the reason why you're creating the content. You know, so that's not a negative thing to people who create content, right? No. Because sometimes that is your job. Yes, and if it is a job that you do and you do it for a paycheck, and okay, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But for him specifically, that was a moment for him, because he sees what he does as ministry, and I think many people do as well. Yeah. And we also see what we do is the same way, where we have a greater purpose behind what we're making. And so it's not just to create a piece of content for likes or follows or anything. It's actually to start a conversation and to, get people to go to the throne and to talk about what is going to the throne, and to experience that. And a lot of people maybe have followed Christ for a while, right? Been a Christian, been a Christ follower. But maybe prayer life, maybe that whole scenario of a relationship with God hasn't really been experienced, for them, or explored. And, him saying that was great, because it just reignited us too, and to say, hey, we just have to make sure that, our heart stays true to what our calling is. And we encourage everyone that's listening, whatever you're called to do, the world will easily try to push you in a certain way and demand things from you. And you always have to come back and remember, okay, well, this is what, I'm not here to please what the world wants.
Right. Well, what I love about it was, another thing you said was, spirituality and creativity, they're not in different sections. Right. And, to see that, and see a lot of times people put them in different boxes, and maybe even unknowingly put them in different boxes, and just, like you said, sort of feed the machine, create content, do this, do that. But it's, you can't really have one without the other if you really want to do it right, and like you said, do it with passion and not burn out. And so it was a great reminder. I think it was really good. If you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it. It's called Saint Lennon Goes to the Throne. It was really great. Episode 008. So
that's it.
One right before this one, obviously, but it was good. But yeah, Today we want to talk about something. We heard a message recently by, is he one of our pastors now, or?
Well, he goes to our church.
He goes to our church,
right?
The Belonging Company in Nashville, Tennessee,
right? And he recently moved and goes to our church. He carries a pastoral spirit.
Yeah.
I don't know if he would call himself a pastor of it, but he's an author, right?
A speaker.
And he's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Many people know who he is.
John Bevere, if you don't go to our church or don't know, John Bevere is an author, speaker. He's an older guy in his 60s.
That's not really old now.
No, of course. But
he's experienced.
He carries so much wisdom.
Yeah.
So much authority.
Yes.
And he spoke a message on, what was the message on? Because it seemed like it was touched on a bunch of different things, but it was one thing. Does that make sense?
Yes. Ultimately, it was about multiplication.
Yes.
But it was about faithfulness.
Yeah.
And
how those two are basically synonyms.
Yes.
Which I thought was so good. I'd never heard multiplication as a synonym for faithfulness before.
Right.
But it makes so much sense, when you talk about being faithful with something that you've been given, that it means multiplying it. It means growing it. It means stewarding it well.
Right.
And not just letting it sit around and just maintaining it, but it means multiplying it. And so it's very convicting for me, because I look around in my life and be like, well, I can't just show up every day and just hold on to what I have. I have to grow it and nurture it and expand it. And so,
well, it also changes again, like you said, the thought process behind stewardship.
Right. Yeah.
Because stewardship, you just think, just keep it okay, and keep focused on it, whatever. But it actually means to grow, to multiply.
Yeah.
And when many people look at stewardship in money, right? And that's an easy way to look at stewardship. But no, we have stewardship in everything that God has given us. Because we're supposed to bring it back to Him and in a greater way.
Yeah.
So it definitely was convicting in the best way.
Yeah.
Really.
And he touched on also grace. And he used that as sort of a segue into the faithfulness and multiplication. But one thing he said about grace that I thought was really good, and something I think we want to hit on today, is that grace is actually empowerment. And, a lot of people equate grace to love or kindness, or all sort of these feel-good emotions.
Right.
But what grace actually is the empowerment to do what you're called to do.
That's it.
And God has given us a certain grace to do special things. Right. Your grace looks different than my grace because He calls us to different things. But the grace is actually the empowerment to do what we're called to do. But the grace doesn't come from us, and so it's out of our natural ability.
Right.
And I think for anyone who does something for a living, if you find yourself in a career that you love, or that you've developed a skill or something like that, and you've grown a career into this, you could find yourself sometimes doing things out of your natural ability because you hone this skill, and you're like, well, I've developed this skill.
Right.
And I've built this talent or whatever it is, or I've built this wisdom or this knowledge. And so then I'm like, well, then it's me.
Right.
And I think sometimes I've gotten into that box personally of being like, well, I've developed this and this and this. And so it's me. And I listen to that message. God had to check me and be like, no, I've given you grace to do things that your natural ability can't do.
Right.
And sometimes you may try to take the wheel and say, oh, that this is you because it's your talent, your gift. But I've actually given you that gift, which is your grace, like God's grace on my life. And so to do what He's called me to do. And so I've actually I've had to do some searching and some repenting of this conviction, because I've realized that there's been different areas in my life that have been, I've worked a lot harder than I've needed to, and exhausted myself when I didn't need to, because I tried to take and do things in my natural ability that God's like, no, I'll give you the grace to do it. I will co-labor with you.
That's it.
And do it with you, and give you the ability to do things that you can't naturally do.
Right.
But you have to actually let me. You have to step into and live in this grace 24/7. And so, yeah, it was, was punched in the face.
Yes, in a good way. I think we all need, those. It's good to be encouraged, right? But being challenged is what makes you grow.
Yeah.
It really makes you grow when you get challenged. if you're encouraged all the time and there's never any challenge, it's going to really stunt your growth because you're going to stay at the same place because it's like, oh, look, everything's great. Everything's fine. And so there's got to be that healthy balance. I think when you read the Bible, Jesus did that really well, of course. And I think in this scenario, it challenged everybody. And that type of message is something that I can go back and look and say that's like a mile marker in my life, to said, hey, when I heard this shifted in my life and reminded me. And exactly what you said, like, I think that many times as Christ followers, I heard this, I think it was a quote by Bono where, he was talking about how he was looking for, he wanted God to be a part of what he was doing, like Bono was doing. But Bono was like, but I just decided that I wanted to be a part of what he was doing.
Yeah.
And I think many times it's like he gives us the desires of our hearts, right? And we read that in the Bible and we don't realize, like, it's not he gives us what we want, right? But he gives us the want, if that makes sense.
He gives us the desire.
He gives us the desire for what?
He gives us what to desire.
Yes, exactly. And so, but and if we seek him, if we go to the throne, and if we seek him, our desires will be in line with his.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's about getting our heartbeat beating at the same time as him.
You want to know why it is because and it goes back to the verse. Mm-hmm. You come boldly to the throne of grace to obtain mercy and find grace.
Right.
And so that there, right there, is you go there, you get what you need, you find your gift.
Yes.
But not only do you find your gift, but you find the ability to do that gift. Mm-hmm. And it comes from there. Right. And it's not, well, it comes from me because I have the gift. It comes straight from there. And so I think, even if you look back at the verses leading up to Hebrews 4:16, which is to the throne vision verse. I don't know what you would say.
Well, that's where to the throne.
Yeah, to the throne was birthed.
If you don't know, that's where to the throne. This
Hebrews
is why.
Hebrews 4:16.
Right. Come boldly to the throne. This is why.
Yes.
To the throne is named to the throne.
Yes. But if you look at the verses leading up to that, it's all about rest.
Right.
And it's all about specifically the rest that the Israelites. It's God's promise of rest. But some of the Israelites did not get to enter that rest because they lost faith in the promise of the promised land.
Right.
So when it's really, the lack of rest is rooted in unbelief. Is because you get exhausted when you try to do things in your own ability.
That's it.
And say, well, I can do this, I can do that. But the rest is really rooted in belief in knowing that God has grace for you to give you ability that you can't do naturally.
Right. Right.
And fill the gaps where you can't actually do it. So, it's so important because that's how people get burnt out, and that's how people. That's why dreams die with people.
Right.
Is because there's exhaustion and rest when you try to do things in your own strength, or that's I think a lot of times why moral failures happen is because you go and go and go and do and do and do. And you forget, hey, I need to go to the throne to get the grace,
right,
and mercy that I need to do this.
And I also think going to the throne that we get to realign our heart with His, and that's really what it is. It's getting close, and resting. When you talk about rest, we rest on Him, right? And so that means that we actually lean on Him. Like if you think about somebody resting on somebody, we rest on Him. Yeah. And you remember growing up, I think, if you have a dad, and maybe you did this with your dad, but I used to, rest on my dad, right? Like as a little boy, you know what I mean?
Fall asleep.
Yeah. You rest on him and you can hear his heartbeat. You ever hear that, Dad? Or you can hear him talk. Yeah. And you can hear that guttural chest talk, that happens. And you hear his voice different when you're resting on him. And I think that is what the rest is we're talking about, is understanding that He is looking for co-laborers, right, to do it with us. So He gives us the vision. He gives us our calling because He gives us the desire, right? Yeah. And our desire comes from Him, of course. So He gives us that. And then sometimes, because we're in the world, and this is what we do in the world, we take that desire and we move from him,
Yeah.
from resting on him to,
Yeah.
like you said, going on your own pace, going in your own strength. And it's like, no, we're supposed to be co-laboring with him, meaning he's laboring with us, and there are things that are going to be out of our own ability.
Yeah.
Exactly what you said. And that's what the message was so impactful that, John Bevere's talking about his first time speaking and how he's not a public speaker. And if you ever hear him speak, it's like, how are you,
Right.
how is that ever a doubt in your mind? But that's what happens when you lose that rest, is that you actually start doubting.
Yeah.
Because you don't realize, like, your calling and your purpose is actually built on your co-laboring with him.
Yeah.
And he is actually part of what you're supposed to do.
Well, it's built on the grace and mercy that you get when you go to the throne.
That's the grace.
If you want like rest, go to the throne. If you want new grace and vision and empowerment for
Right.
your business or for your family or for your life or for your finances or whatever it is, you go to the throne
Right.
and you get grace and your mercy to help you in your time of need. That's the exact verse. And so, I think it's funny too. John Bevere even talked about how, like, his worst subjects were
Right.
were like English and like being able to
Like writing.
not write. And the dude has books published in, what did he say, like 100 and something, 150 different languages.
Just something crazy. Just
Like millions and millions and millions of copies translated into hundreds of languages.
right.
And
For
this
someone
dude's-
who couldn't write.
And this dude's like, yeah, I can't write.
Right.
And that's what grace does when, like,
Well, because the desire of God on him was to be an author.
yes.
And even this message came from a book that's
Yeah.
entitled Acts, which
Yes.
is multiplication.
Well-
and that is, he's an author, and it came. It's all grace.
Well, let's just take it back to the Bible because this is so good.
Yeah,
Moses had that exact same story.
that's it.
When God said, I'm going to choose you, I choose you to set my people free from Egypt. And Moses said, but I can't speak.
Right.
I have a stuttering problem. And God said, but I've chosen you. And what did he end up doing? He ended up going and setting the Israelites free
Right.
and leading them out of Egypt and leading them eventually, in a way, to the promised land. He didn't lead them to there, right? Because he died in the wilderness. But he's the one that started the journey in leading them to freedom. But he couldn't speak. So I just imagine the story that has the lineage of Jesus in it,
Yes.
and the story that has the lineage and the history of salvation and freedom as we know it came from a guy who said, well, God, I'm sorry, I can't speak. So
Right.
you're going to have to choose someone else.
Well, let's talk about David.
Right.
And Goliath.
It goes
Let's talk
on
about,
and on and
right,
on and on.
How I'm going to pick the smallest brother,
Yes.
the one that's not qualified.
Yes.
He's going to wear no armor.
But I give you the grace to do things that are not in your natural ability.
That's it. Totally out of your ability.
Is it really natural for a little 5-something foot guy to kill a 9-foot Goliath?
Of course not.
Of course, right?
Right.
And then to go cut off his head and
Right.
that's not that. What? That's not even. It doesn't
Right.
even make sense with a stone.
Yeah.
Really?
But again, that's
It's-
grace.
yes,
That's
it's
grace
called
when you're
grace.
called
Yes.
to defeat
So
your giants.
I've seen things in my life happen where I'm like, how did this even happen? But it just came from me saying yes. What my life looks like right now, it's like
Yeah.
it just came from me saying yes. And things are happening and have happened in my life that I'm like, I don't deserve this. There's no way I could make this happen on my own.
Right.
But God's like, well, you said yes, and so I've put grace on your life.
Exactly.
And I think another thing too is, a lot of times as creatives, you said mentioned it before, you get in this phase of like, well, my job is being creative, right? My job is producing this and that, and so I have to keep producing and keep feeding the machine and keep driving content or doing this and doing that, and we can get in this rut of having sort of tunnel vision, it feels like sometimes.
Right.
And getting in on, okay, this is the path I'm going, and this is the path that I've chosen. But what I love is you have to go in a different direction to go to the throne.
Yes.
You have to go, not in your direction, but you have to go to the Lord's direction. You have to go into his presence to get the grace and mercy that you need. And it has nothing to do with the path that you're going. You have to choose a different path because it's, Isaiah 55 says his ways are higher than our ways.
That's it.
And his ways are, like his thoughts are just way greater and way grander than we can ever imagine. They are not our thoughts.
Right.
And so to get thoughts, to get new vision, to get fresh revelation, to get new rest,
Right.
you have to do things different than you have done them before. You can't do the same thing and get different results, right?
Yep.
And so you have to go to a new place, a place that has higher thoughts and higher ways,
Right.
to get fresh vision and revelation,
One of those things that, we've talked about is that yoking, right?
Yeah.
Yoke.
Yeah.
Y-O-K-E, yoke,
Yeah.
right? And, that's an old term that's not used often now, and we don't understand it in our modern day because we don't have bulls yoked together plowing fields, for crops. Like, we don't have that.
We have tractors.
Right. We have John Deere, which are awesome because they make cool hats. I want a John Deere hat. I still don't have one.
Camouflage one.
Anyway, yeah.
Or a bright orange one.
Something.
Yeah.
Give me a John Deere hat. So, but in Matthew 11, this is one of the most well-known scriptures, but I think it also talks about, what we're saying right now is when you go to the throne, okay, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. We just talked about rest and what resting actually means.
Yeah.
Take my yoke upon you, right, and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. So think about this. Take my yoke upon you, right, the thing that ties us together to him.
That goes in the same direction.
And we're tied together with where he's going, and that to me is where I want to be.
Yeah.
Often when we start working and losing our rest and working in our own strength is because we got out of the yoke, and now we're pulling this thing behind us on our own strength.
Yeah.
And we're actually sometimes pulling it in the opposite way.
Right.
That the
in
Lord
a way
is
that
going.
you're not even supposed to
Right.
go. Yeah.
And we wonder why we're not going anywhere. And it's like, yeah, because we're supposed to be going that
about to
way.
go off a
We're
cliff.
supposed to be yoked with him and tied together with him in what we do. And it continues to say, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So think about that. Many times our calling can be a burden.
Yeah.
It can be. And I think sometimes it's a burden when it's in our own strength, of course.
We can make it a burden.
We can make it a burden on our own, on self. And so we can be so excited for our calling, whatever, and then we get into it. We go our own way in it.
Yeah.
We lose that going to the throne and getting rest in that intimacy with him. And then now it's a burden. And so I love that it even says that my yoke is easy, my burden is light. And it just means that when you are tied to him,
Yeah.
and when you go to the throne and you're tied to the Lord, that whatever you're called to do is actually going to be light. Because it's not going to be in your own strength.
Yeah.
It's not going to be in your own intelligence and none of your own ability, your expertise. It's going to be him.
Wow.
And you're tied with him. And what you can do, and that's the whole multiplication. I think many times it's like, you look at Jesus when he multiplied, right, the fish and the loaves. And what I love about it is that who multiplied it?
Yeah.
Who multiplied it? Did the Lord multiply it? Yes, but whose hands was it in?
In his hands.
Whose?
Jesus' hands.
And many times we want to multiply things in our own hands.
Yeah.
And I think but it's co-labor because guess what?
They had to pass the.
They
the
also
fish-
had to be a
Yeah.
part of the process.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, Jesus didn't do everything on his own.
Right.
The disciples didn't do everything on on their own, right? But it was them doing it together.
Yeah.
And that's when the multiplication happened.
Yeah.
When they're a part of the process.
Yeah.
So I look at that and say, okay, what has God given me that I'm trying to multiply in my own strength? When he's like, no, this is a together thing. This is a together thing. This is not I'm the multiplier, and you do it with me. And so realign ourselves and say, this is our vision of To the Throne. This is what this is all about. You go to the throne, you will find rest, and you will get to rest on him as he co-labors with you.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be all your own strength. And when it becomes all your own strength, it becomes all your own glory. And all the glory goes to him. And this is why, we co-labor with him.
Yeah.
So we're a part of the process, but he gets the glory.
Ooh.
And I think that's the biggest lesson that we need to learn through all of this, and the impact in me is because this world, we want the glory and we want the adoration.
Yeah.
But as Christ followers, we give that up and say, no, you get it. You get all the glory.
You want to know why?
Like we don't get some of the glory. You get all the glory.
Yes, because we can't handle the glory.
That's it.
Because we weren't made for it.
We can't carry the weight of the glory.
Yes, we were made for it. We literally were made. We're human. We were made for it. And I've referenced this before, but that's why the elders in the throne room lay their crowns down.
Right.
Because they don't deserve them. Because they know who gave them those crowns. So.
That's good. Woo. Hey, I feel good.
I feel good.
Hopefully you guys feel good out there.
I feel, yes. Yes, this is the vision of To the Throne.
Yeah.
We want to make art, and we just want to talk about things that draw people closer to the Lord and closer in the presence and closer to the place where they can get grace and mercy.
Yeah.
To be empowered to do what they've called to do.
Where do you find that?
You find that at the throne.
That's it.
So today's a great day to go to the throne.
It is.
Today is the perfect day now.
And tomorrow.
And
the next day.
And every day after that.
Yes.
So go to the throne.
This has been a great podcast.
It's been so good.
Listen, we're not we're just starting this thing.
Yes.
And if you guys don't know much about us, you can check out our Instagram, right? At To the Throne.
Yeah.
Right?
DM us.
DM us on Instagram. Let us know how this impacted you. Let us know how, Saint Lennon impacted you as well. Like any of these conversations we're going to have, we have more coming in the future. So let us know how they've impacted you. We got a website, tothethrone.co. You can check that out. We have some products on there.
Pew, pew.
More to come.
Yeah.
And we're super excited on this season of what's happening with To the Throne and where it's going. And we're getting close to a new year. And we know that with every new year, there's that new beginning, and we can start feeling the new beginning. So
big stuff coming.
We want you to come on this ride with us.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us today. This has been great. And thank you for going to the throne with us. Have a good day.
Peace out.